My wife threw my birthday cake on the floor and said, "Eat it off the ground." The whole tables laughed. I didn't say a word. That evening, my wife's mother texted, "We've chosen to sever all contact. Stay away forever." My wife liked it. I replied, "Removing my name from every loan tomorrow." By midnight, the group chat flooded. 100 missed calls. I stood in the center of my own living room, surrounded by people who were supposed to love me, and watched my birthday cake, a 3-layer chocolate masterpiece with hand-piped frosting, arc through the air in slow motion before it hit the hardwood floor with a wet, decisive slap. The room went silent for exactly 2 seconds. Then my wife Sarah said the words that would end our marriage, though neither of us knew it yet. "Go ahead. Eat it off the ground." The laughter started small. Her sister Emma first, always the quickest to follow Sarah's lead, her high-pitched cackle cutting through the air like breaking glass. Then her brother Marcus joined in, that deep, mean laugh he'd perfected in high school when he used to mock the kids who couldn't afford the right sneakers. Sarah's mother, Patricia, didn't laugh outright. She never did anything so undignified. But she smiled, thin and sharp as a paper cut, her eyes gleaming with something that looked uncomfortably close to satisfaction. My own mother stood near the kitchen doorway, frozen with a stack of dessert plates in her hands. My sister Jenny had gone pale, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. My best friend Mike, who'd driven 3 hours to be here, looked like he was watching a car accident in progress, horrified but unable to look away. I didn't say a word, not because I couldn't, not because I was too shocked, though God knows I was shocked, but because in that moment, standing there with chocolate frosting slowly spreading across the floor I'd refinished myself last summer, I had a moment of perfect crystalline clarity. I saw the pattern. I saw the whole shape of my marriage like a constellation suddenly visible in a night sky I'd been staring at for years without really seeing. Every dismissive comment, every public humiliation disguised as a joke, every time I'd swallowed my pride and told myself it was just her sense of humor, just her family's way, just a bad day, just stress from work, just anything but what it actually was. I saw it all. And I knew that if I opened my mouth, if I said what I was thinking, there would be a fight. Sarah would cry. Her family would close ranks. I'd be painted as the villain, the oversensitive husband who couldn't take a joke, who'd ruined his own birthday party by making a scene. By tomorrow morning, it would be my fault somehow. It always was. So I said nothing. I bent down, picked up the cake plate, miraculously unbroken, and carried it to the kitchen. I walked past my mother, who reached out to touch my arm, but I shook my head gently. Not now. I set the plate in the sink, washed my hands, and dried them on the dish towel with the little blue whales that Sarah had always said was too childish for our kitchen, but that I'd kept anyway because my grandmother had given it to me. When I returned to the living room, the party was continuing as if nothing had happened. Someone had turned up the music. Marcus was telling a story about his new boat. Sarah was laughing at something her mother had said, her hand on Patricia's arm, both of them looking flushed and pleased with themselves. I stood there for a moment, watching my wife laugh in our living room, while my birthday cake slowly dissolved into the grain of the floor I'd spent 3 weekends refinishing because she'd wanted it to look authentic and rustic for her Instagram photos. Then I turned and walked upstairs to our bedroom. The evening was May 14th, 2024. I was 34 years old, and I had just experienced the last public humiliation I would ever accept from anyone. I need to back up. I need to tell you how I got here. Standing in my bedroom, listening to my wife's laughter drift up the stairs like smoke, while I opened the closet and pulled out the filing cabinet I'd moved in there 6 months ago when Sarah had decided she needed my office for her creative space. We'd been married for 7 years, together for 9, high school sweethearts, if you can call it that. She was the popular girl, captain of the dance team, homecoming court, the kind of girl who seemed to glow with some indefinable quality that made people want to be near her. I was the quiet kid who'd surprise everyone by starting a small web design business my junior year. Not popular exactly, but not invisible either, profitable. I think that's what attracted her to me initially, if I'm being honest with myself. Not my sparkling personality or my devastatingly handsome features. I'm average looking at best, the kind of face you'd forget 5 minutes after meeting. But I had money, or at least the promise of money, which in Sarah's world amounted to the same thing. Her family had money once. Old money. The kind that came with a hyphenated last name and stories about great-grandfathers who'd owned textile mills. But somewhere between the great-grandfathers and Patricia, that money had evaporated, leaving behind only the attitude that came with it. They still acted like aristocracy. They still spoke in that particular cadence that suggested they were doing you a favor by allowing you to exist in their presence. But they lived in a nice but not extraordinary house in a good but not exclusive neighborhood. And Patricia drove a 10-year-old Mercedes that she refused to replace because it's still perfectly good, which was true, but also maybe not the whole truth. When Sarah and I started dating senior year, Patricia looked at me the way you might look at a stray dog that's wandered into your yard. Potentially useful, but requiring careful observation before any decisions were made. I proposed when I was 25 and Sarah was 24. My business was doing well. I'd expanded from web design to app development, and I'd just landed a contract with a regional healthcare network that would keep me solvent for at least 2 years. I'd saved up for a ring. Not huge, but real. A 1-carat diamond in a platinum setting that cost me 3 months of profits. Sarah said yes immediately, squealing and throwing her arms around my neck in the middle of the restaurant, where I'd planned this careful romantic proposal. But when we told her family the next day, Patricia had taken one look at the ring, smiled that paper-cut smile, and said, "How sweet. Very economical." I should have known then. I should have seen the pattern forming, the shape of what was to come. But I was in love, or thought I was, and I told myself that Patricia was from a different generation, that her standards were just different, that she'd warm up to me eventually. She never did. The wedding cost $83,000. I paid for most of it. My parents contributed what they could. My father was a high school teacher, my mother a nurse. They'd saved $10,000 in a special account they'd opened when I was born, planning for this moment. Sarah's family contributed nothing, but Patricia had opinions about everything. The venue wasn't prestigious enough. Then it was too ostentatious. The flowers were pedestrian. The menu was trying too hard. My suit was off the rack. I'd had it tailored, but it wasn't bespoke, which in Patricia's world meant it might as well have come from a thrift store. The guest list was too small. Sarah wanted 200 people. I'd argued for 100 because of the cost. The band wasn't the right kind of band. The photographer wasn't artistic enough. Sarah agreed with her mother on every point, and I found myself nodding and saying yes and quietly increasing my credit limit and taking out a personal loan to cover the shortfall because every time I suggested something more modest, Sarah would get this look on her face, hurt and disappointed, like I was failing some fundamental test of my love for her. "Don't you want our wedding to be special?" she'd ask, her eyes going wide and shiny with tears that never quite fell. "Don't you want people to remember it?" And I did want those things, so I said yes. I said yes to everything. The wedding was beautiful. Patricia cried delicate, photogenic tears during the ceremony. Sarah looked stunning. She always did. That quality that made people want to look at her had only intensified with age. The band played perfectly. The flowers were spectacular. Everyone said it was the loveliest wedding they'd ever attended. I spent the next 3 years paying it off. Sarah didn't work. Not really. She had a series of projects, a lifestyle blog that never quite took off, an Etsy store selling hand-painted plant pots that generated maybe $200 in revenue over 6 months before she got bored, a brief stint as a social media consultant for local businesses that ended when her first client asked for concrete metrics and she couldn't provide them. But mostly, she decorated our house. She spent hours arranging and rearranging furniture, painting accent walls, hunting through estate sales and antique stores for the perfect vintage mirror or the ideal mid-century modern side table. Our home looked like something out of a magazine spread. Carefully curated, aesthetically perfect, completely devoid of any personality that wasn't hers. I worked. I worked a lot. The app development business was competitive, and I'd transitioned into primarily doing contract work for larger companies. Less creative freedom, but more financial stability. I worked from home most days, in my office with its door that closed and its walls that I'd painted a calm gray blue before Sarah had decided she needed the space. We were comfortable. Not wealthy, but comfortable. We took vacations, always to places Sarah wanted to go, always staying in hotels that were just slightly beyond our budget because Sarah said life was about experiences, not savings accounts. We had nice things. We ate at good restaurants. Sarah drove a new Lexus SUV that she'd insisted she needed for the business she was going to start. That one was going to be an interior design consultation service, but it never materialized beyond a logo she'd paid someone to design and a website I'd built for her that she never updated. I drove a 6-year-old Honda. I told myself it was practical, reliable, good on gas. I told myself I didn't care about cars. But both things were true, but also, Sarah had made it clear that we couldn't both drive luxury vehicles, and she needed the Lexus for her image. Her image mattered a lot. We had dinner with her family every Sunday. This wasn't discussed or negotiated. It was simply a fact of our marriage, like the sky being blue or water being wet. Every Sunday at 6 p.m., we drove to Patricia's house and sat at her dining room table and ate whatever she'd prepared. Always traditional, always vaguely British, in the way that American families who want to seem aristocratic default to roast beef, Yorkshire pudding, overboiled vegetables. Patricia presided over these dinners like a queen holding court. Marcus would talk about his job at the investment firm, entry level, but he made it sound like he was personally managing billions. Emma would discuss her latest drama. She seemed to specialize in collecting and discarding boyfriends at a rate that suggested either very high standards or very poor judgment, possibly both. Sarah would light up at these dinners in a way she never quite did at home. She'd laugh louder, talk faster, lean in closer to her mother's stories. She'd make jokes at my expense, gentle ones at first in the early years. Observations about how I'd forgotten to buy the right kind of milk, or how I'd worn socks that didn't quite match, or how I'd mispronounced a word. "He's so brilliant with computers," she'd say, her hand on my arm like she was softening the blow, but totally hopeless with real-world things. Her family would laugh. I'd smile. What else could I do? Over the years, the jokes got sharper, less gentle, more calculated. My clothes were never quite right. My table manners were charmingly rustic. My opinions on politics, art, culture, anything really, were sweet or interesting, which in Patricia's vocabulary meant wrong but not worth correcting. When I'd try to contribute to conversations, there would be this pause, this moment where everyone would look at me with expressions that ranged from polite tolerance to barely concealed impatience, waiting for me to finish so they could return to more interesting topics. I started talking less at Sunday dinners. Eventually, I mostly stopped talking at all. Sarah never defended me. Not once in 7 years. When her mother made a particularly cutting remark about my background, my father was a teacher, remember, respectable, but decidedly not aristocratic, Sarah would laugh along with her. And when Marcus would tell stories about his important clients that were thinly veiled attempts to make my work sound quaint and trivial by comparison, Sarah would nod enthusiastically. I told myself it didn't matter. Family dynamics were complicated. Sarah was close to her mother. That was good, wasn't it? Better than being distant. And the jokes weren't that bad, really. They were just teasing. I was being too sensitive. I told myself a lot of things. The filing cabinet in my closet contained 7 years of paperwork. I'm organized by nature. It's probably part of what makes me good at my work, and I'd kept everything. Every document, every contract, every receipt, every bank statement, every tax return. I pulled out the folder labeled Property and Assets and sat down on the edge of our bed. Our house, the beautiful and perfectly decorated house that Sarah had spent hundreds of hours turning into an Instagram-worthy showpiece, was in my name. Only my name. I'd bought it 3 years ago with money I'd saved from my business and a mortgage I'd qualified for based solely on my income. Sarah hadn't been on the mortgage application because she didn't have verifiable income. She'd signed some papers at closing, but they were spousal consent forms, not ownership documents. The house was mine. The Lexus she drove was leased, and the lease was in my name because, again, she didn't have the income to qualify on her own. I was legally responsible for the monthly payments. Our credit cards, we had 3, were all in my name. She had cards attached to my accounts, but they weren't her accounts. Every purchase she made appeared on statements that came to me, that I paid for my checking account every month. I pulled out the folder labeled Family Loans. This was more complicated. 6 years ago, Marcus had called me. Not Sarah, me, directly. He'd been apologetic, embarrassed even. He was having some cash flow problems, he said. The investment firm was restructuring, his commissions were delayed, he had rent coming due, and his landlord was being unreasonable about late payments. Could I help him out? Just short term, just until his next commission check cleared. $5,000. I'd transferred it the next day. He never paid it back. 4 years ago, Emma had needed help with her car. The transmission had failed and she didn't have the money for repairs. Could we loan her $3,000? Sarah had asked me, her eyes soft and pleading. She's my sister. We can't just let her be without a car. Emma never paid it back either. 3 years ago, Patricia's roof had needed extensive repairs. Water damage, structural issues, the kind of thing that couldn't be postponed. She'd needed $20,000. She'd asked Sarah, who'd come to me with that same pleading expression, "It's my mother. She raised me. How can we say no?" I hadn't said no. I'd taken out a personal loan, not a home equity loan because the house was still too new and I didn't have enough equity yet, and given Patricia the money. She'd promised to pay me back in installments. She'd made 3 payments of $500 each, then stopped. When I'd gently mentioned it to Sarah, she'd gotten angry with me. "My mother is struggling," she'd said. "How can you be so cold about this? Money isn't everything." I'd let it go, and I'd always let things go. Over 7 years, I'd loaned Sarah's family a total of $63,000. I had documentation for all of it. Texts, emails, bank transfers, even a few promissory notes that Patricia had insisted on writing up because we're not the kind of family who doesn't formalize these things properly. The notes were notarized and everything, though I'd never imagined I'd need to enforce them. I pulled out another folder, joint expenses. Except they weren't really joint, were they? I paid the mortgage, I paid the property taxes, I paid the utilities, the insurance, the HOA fees, the landscaping service Sarah had insisted we needed, the house cleaner who came every 2 weeks, the grocery bills, the restaurant tabs, the vacation costs, the car payments, both cars. Actually, because mine was paid off, but I'd financed hers. Sarah contributed nothing financially to our household. She hadn't in years. I sat there on our bed in our bedroom with its perfectly coordinated linens and its carefully selected artwork and its designer lamps, and I did math. Over 7 years of marriage, I'd earned approximately $1.4 million for my business. After taxes and business expenses, that netted out to roughly $900,000. We'd spent about $700,000 on the wedding, on the house down payment and mortgage, on furnishings, on cars, on vacations, on daily living expenses, on loans to Sarah's family that would never be repaid. We had $200,000 in savings and retirement accounts. All in my name. Sarah had contributed $0 to any of this. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Are you okay? Do you want me to come up?" I typed back, "I'm fine. Thank you for being here. I'm sorry you had to see that." Her response came quickly. "You have nothing to apologize for. I love you." I could hear the party continuing downstairs. Someone had turned the music up louder. I could hear Sarah's laugh, bright and carefree, like nothing unusual had happened. Like she hadn't just thrown a cake on the floor and told her husband to eat it like a dog while her entire family laughed. I opened my laptop. I want to be clear about something. I'm not a vengeful person by nature. I don't enjoy conflict. I don't fantasize about dramatic confrontations or elaborate revenge schemes. For 7 years, I'd absorbed countless small cruelties and told myself they didn't matter, that marriage was about compromise, and that love meant accepting someone's flaws and their family's flaws and just making it work. But there's a difference between being patient and being a doormat. There's a difference between choosing your battles and letting yourself be ground down into nothing. And there's a difference between forgiveness and enabling someone to keep hurting you. I thought about the cake on the floor. I thought about Sarah's face when she'd thrown it. Not angry, not out of control, but amused. Like she was playing to her audience, performing for her family's approval. The cruelty had been casual, thoughtless. The kind of cruelty that comes from genuinely not seeing someone as fully human. That's what hurt more than anything. Not the act itself, but the realization that my wife had looked at me and thought, this will be funny. This will entertain my family. She'd calculated the moment and decided my humiliation was worth the laugh. I pulled up my email and started a new message to my attorney. David Chen and I had gone to high school together. He'd been 2 years ahead of me, captain of the debate team, The kind of guy who everyone knew was going to be successful at whatever he chose to do. He'd become a family law attorney, and ironically, he'd handled the paperwork when Sarah and I had bought the house. He'd suggested then that we might want a postnuptial agreement, given that I was bringing significantly more assets to the marriage. But I'd waved him off. I trusted Sarah. We were in love. Now I typed, David, I need to discuss filing for divorce. Are you available for a call this weekend? Best. James. His response came through within 5 minutes. He was apparently working late on a Saturday night, which I probably should have remembered given that he'd just made partner at his firm. Sorry to hear that. Yes, I can talk tomorrow afternoon. 3 p.m. work for you? Call my cell. I confirmed and closed the laptop. Then I pulled out my phone and opened my text messages. The family group chat, the Peterson clan, was active, as it always was during gatherings. Sarah had created it 2 years ago as a way to coordinate Sunday dinners and share photos and generally maintain the sense of family unity that Patricia seemed to consider essential. I scrolled through the messages from tonight. Emma had posted a photo of the cake pre-throw with the caption, James turns 34, looking good, followed by a series of party emojis. Then, after the incident, Marcus had written, most dramatic cake cutting I've ever seen, Emma. I'm dying, Patricia. Some people are so sensitive. It was just a joke. Sarah had liked that message. I could see the little heart icon next to it with her name attached. I stared at that heart for a long time. My phone buzzed again, but this time it was a new text thread. Just Patricia and me. My stomach clenched even before I opened it. James, we've been discussing your behavior this evening, and we've decided it's best for everyone if we take some space from you. Your negativity and inability to take a joke has become exhausting for the whole family. We've chosen to sever all contact. Please respect our wishes and stay away forever. You read it 3 times. Then I looked at the timestamp. She'd sent it at 10:47 p.m. It was now 10:51. I switched back to the group chat and watched in real time as Sarah read the message. Her profile showed she was active, and then deliberately went to the direct message thread with her mother and liked it. She liked it. My wife had just endorsed her mother's decision to cut me out of the family, without talking to me, without coming upstairs to check on me, without apparently any hesitation at all. I sat there for a moment, phone in my hand, and felt something shift in my chest. Not breaking that had already happened when I watched the cake hit the floor. This was different. This was something crystallizing, hardening, or becoming permanent. I opened the group chat and typed, I'll be removing my name from every loan and financial obligation related to the Peterson family tomorrow morning. You should all prepare accordingly. I hit send. Then I turned off my phone. The house got very quiet very suddenly. I could hear footsteps on the stairs, rapid, heavy. Marcus's footsteps, I thought. Then lighter ones. Emma. Then Sarah's distinctive quick step, the one she used when she was moving with purpose. Someone knocked on the bedroom door, then knocked again, harder. James, James, open the door. Sarah's voice, higher pitched than normal. I didn't move. James, this isn't funny. What do you mean, removing your name? What are you talking about? More knocking. Multiple hands now. Buddy, come on, let's talk about this. Marcus's voice, trying for reasonable, but landing somewhere around panicked. I opened my laptop and started working. First, the credit cards. I logged into each account and marked Sarah's supplementary cards as lost or stolen. They'd be deactivated within minutes. Then I set up new cards for myself, different numbers which would arrive in 3 to 5 business days. The knocking continued. Sarah was saying something about how I was being ridiculous, how they'd been joking. How could I be so sensitive? Didn't I understand how family worked? Next, the Lexus lease. I logged into the account and started the process to terminate it early. There would be penalties, but I'd rather pay them than continue being responsible for a car payment on a vehicle I didn't drive for a person who just endorsed cutting me out of her family while laughing about my humiliation. The termination couldn't be completed online. It required a phone call and proper notice, but I filled out the preliminary paperwork and set a reminder to call first thing Monday morning. James on the, my mother didn't mean it like that. Sarah was really shouting now. She was upset. You embarrassed us by walking away like that. You made a scene. I'd made a scene. By quietly leaving the room after my wife threw my birthday cake on the floor and told me to eat it off the ground. I'd made a scene. I pulled up my bank accounts. We had one joint checking account that we'd opened when we got married. Sarah had insisted on it, said it was important for married couples to share finances. In practice, it was the account where I deposited money and Sarah withdrew it. Current balance, $8,300. I initiated a transfer to my personal checking account, $8,299, leaving $1 in the joint account. I couldn't close it unilaterally, but I could empty it. I'd close it properly through my attorney. James, open this door right now. Patricia's voice now, sharp with command, the tone she probably used on service workers who weren't moving fast enough for her liking. I looked at the door. It had a lock, standard bedroom privacy lock, the kind you can open with a pin or a small screwdriver if you need to. I wondered if they'd try. I decided I didn't care. I pulled up the folder labeled Loans Marcus and attached it to a new email to David with the subject line, Financial Documentation, Marcus Peterson. Then I did the same for Emma's folder and Patricia's folder. Somewhere in the middle of this, my mother knocked on the door. I knew her knock, soft and respectful even in crisis. James, honey, your father and I are going to head out. Your sister already left. Please call me tomorrow, okay? I love you. I got up and opened the door just wide enough to hug her, quickly, while Sarah and her family crowded the hallway behind her, all of them trying to talk at once. I love you too, Mom. I'll call you tomorrow. Thank you for coming. I closed the door before anyone else could push their way in, relocked it, and went back to my laptop. My phone, still off, was sitting on the nightstand. I turned it back on. 100 missed calls. The number was so absurd that I actually laughed out loud, a short, sharp bark of sound that surprised me. The group chat had exploded. I scrolled through messages, watching the progression from confusion to panic to anger to desperate bargaining. Marcus, wait, what do you mean removing your name? Emma, James, this is crazy. Patricia, this is extremely immature behavior. Sarah, James, answer your phone. Marcus. Buddy, seriously pick up Emma. James, please. Sarah, this isn't funny anymore. Marcus. James, I need that money for rent. You can't just... Patricia. We need to discuss this like adults, Sarah. James. On and on. Hundreds of messages, the tone shifting from indignant to worried to outright panicked as they realized what I was actually saying. I wasn't removing my name from their family. I was removing my name and my financial liability from their lives. The house loan that Marcus had sworn was temporary and would be paid back within 6 months. That was my money, legally. But I documented it carefully, including his written promise to repay. I could pursue it legally if I wanted to. The car repair for Emma, same situation. Patricia's roof, she'd signed a promissory note. It was legally binding. But more immediately, more urgently for them, I was the one who paid for everything in Sarah's life. The house she lived in, the car she drove, the credit cards she used for her daily Starbucks runs and her online shopping and her lunches with friends, the utilities that kept her comfortable, the phone bill that was currently being run up with desperate calls to my number. I opened the phone carrier's website and looked at our family plan. Sarah's line was under my account. So was Patricia's, actually. I'd added her 2 years ago when she'd complained about her bill being too high, and somehow I'd ended up paying it permanently. I removed both lines from my account, effective end of billing cycle. They'd have 22 days to set up their own service. Someone was trying to use a credit card on the bedroom door lock. I could hear the plastic scraping against the mechanism. It wouldn't work. The lock was designed to prevent exactly that. But the fact that they were trying was almost funny. Almost. I looked at the clock. 11:43 p.m. I pulled up a text message, this one to my sister, Jenny. Hey, I'm okay. I'm getting a divorce. Can I stay with you for a few days while I sort things out? I'll leave tomorrow. Her response was immediate. Oh my God, yes. Come whenever. I'm here. I love you. I'm so sorry about tonight. Then, should I come get you now? Do you need an extraction? I smiled. Jenny was a social worker, but she'd clearly been watching too many action movies. No, I'm good. I'll drive over tomorrow afternoon, thank you. I packed a bag, clothes, laptop, and important documents from the filing cabinet, my passport, my banking information, the external hard drive with my business backups. I packed methodically, calmly, taking my time. Every so often, someone would knock on the door or try to talk to me through it, but I tuned them out. At some point, the house got quiet again. I heard car doors, an engine starting. Patricia and Emma leaving, probably. Marcus might have driven separately or gotten a ride with them. Sarah was still in the house. I could hear her downstairs, talking on the phone. Her voice was high and strained, not quite crying, but close. I finished packing, set my bag by the door, and lay down on top of the covers, still fully dressed. I didn't sleep, but I rested. I stared at the ceiling and thought about the shape my life had taken, how I'd bent and compressed myself, trying to fit into the space Sarah and her family had allotted to me. I thought about all the times I'd swallowed words, accepted blame that wasn't mine, apologized for things I hadn't done. I thought about the cake on the floor and Sarah's face when she'd thrown it, that casual cruelty, that certainty that I would take it, that I would always take it, because I always had. She'd been right until tonight. I'd always taken it. But people change. Situations change. There's a breaking point for everything, even patience, even love. Especially love that was never really love at all, just familiarity and habit and the sunk cost fallacy dressed up in wedding vows. I waited until I heard Sarah go into the guest bedroom and close the door. Then I waited another hour to be sure she was asleep. At 3:15 a.m., I picked up my bag, unlocked the bedroom door, and walked downstairs. The cake was still on the floor. Someone had made a half-hearted attempt to clean it up. There were paper towels laid over the worst of it. But mostly, it was still there, slowly congealing into the grain of my beautiful hardwood floor. I stepped over it, walked out the front door, got in my Honda, and drove to Jenny's apartment. My sister lived in a modest two-bedroom about 45 minutes away. She'd been a social worker for 8 years, specializing in family services, which meant she'd seen every variation of dysfunctional family dynamics that existed. When I knocked on her door at 4 a.m., she opened it immediately, like she'd been waiting. She hugged me without saying anything, and I realized I was shaking. "Come on," she said quietly. "Guest room's ready. We'll talk when you wake up." I slept for 12 hours. When I finally woke up, it was late afternoon on Sunday. For a moment, I was disoriented. Wrong room, wrong bed, wrong light coming through the windows. Then I remembered, and the events of the previous night came back in a rush that made my chest tight. I checked my phone, 273 missed calls, 418 text messages, 67 voicemails. The group chat had continued its meltdown throughout the night and into the day. I scrolled through it, watching the progression. 1 a.m. Marcus, "James, seriously, where are you? We need to talk. 2 a.m. Emma, "This is insane. You can't just disappear. 3 a.m. Or, "Please come home. I'm scared. Where did you go?" 4 a.m. Patricia, "This behavior is unacceptable and childish." 6 a.m. Marcus, "My landlord just called. Rent was supposed to clear Friday. What the hell?" James, 8 a.m. Sarah, "James, I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry about the cake. Please come home." 10 a.m. Emma, "My card got declined at brunch. Did you seriously cancel my card?" 11 a.m. Patricia, "We need to speak immediately. This vindictive behavior is beneath you." Noon. Sarah, "James, where are you?" 1 p.m. Marcus, "I'm going to have to borrow money from mom now. You realize that, right? You're putting her in a bad position." 2 p.m. Patricia, "I don't know what's gotten into you, but this stops now." 3 p.m. Sarah, "I called your mom and she won't tell me where you are. This is not okay. We're married. You can't just leave." I put the phone down and went to find Jenny. She was in the kitchen making what smelled like chicken soup. She looked up when I came in and studied my face for a moment. "How are you holding up?" "I don't know yet," I said honestly. "Ask me again in a week." She nodded and ladled soup into a bowl. "Eat, then we'll talk." The soup was good, homemade, the kind of thing our mother used to make when we were sick as kids. I ate slowly, feeling the warmth spread through me, feeling slightly more human with each bite. "Okay," Jenny said when I'd finished. Tell me what you need." "I need a divorce attorney. I have one, actually. David Chen. Remember him from high school? But I need to make sure he's the right choice for this." "He's good," Jenny said immediately. "I've worked with him on a few cases. He's thorough, and he doesn't let people push him around. He'll be good for you." I nodded. "I'm calling him at 3. The other thing I need—" I hesitated. "I need to understand what just happened. I need to know if I'm being crazy." Jenny leaned back in her chair and looked at me steadily. "You want me to be honest? Always. I've hated Sarah since about 6 months after you got married, she said bluntly. I've hated watching what she and her family do to you. I've wanted to say something for years, but Mom said to stay out of it, that you needed to figure it out yourself, that unsolicited advice would just push you away. I absorbed this. What do they do to me? James. She said my name like it hurt her. They treat you like a wallet with legs. They mock you constantly. They dismiss everything you say and do. Sarah spends your money like it's water and contributes nothing. And I don't mean financially, though that too. I mean, she contributes nothing to your emotional well-being, your happiness, your growth as a person. She tears you down at every opportunity to make herself feel superior, and her family does the same thing. But I started, no, Jenny interrupted. No buts. I'm a professional, remember? This is literally what I do for a living. I assess family dynamics, and your marriage has been emotionally abusive for years. What happened last night with the cake? That was just the most visible example. But the constant belittling, the financial exploitation, the isolation from your own feelings and perspective, that's abuse, James. That's not normal marriage problems. That's abuse. I sat with that for a long moment. Abuse. The word seemed too big, too dramatic for what I'd experienced. Abuse was violence, wasn't it? Abuse was screaming and threats and visible damage. But Jenny was watching me with professional compassion. The look I'd seen her give her clients when she had to tell them difficult truths, and I realized she was right. She was absolutely right. So what do I do? I asked. You already started, she said. You left. That's the hardest part. Now you follow through. You get a good attorney. You document everything. You protect yourself legally and financially. You don't let them manipulate you into going back or feeling guilty or believing that you're the problem. Sarah keeps texting that she's sorry. Of course she is. She's sorry she's losing her cash cow. She's sorry she might actually have to support herself. She is not sorry for how she's treated you. And the minute you go back, it'll be more of the same. My phone rang. Sarah, for what was probably the 50th time that day, I didn't answer. Jenny smiled. Good. Keep doing that. At 3 p.m., I called David Chen. He answered on the second ring, and we spent the next 2 hours going through everything. My documentation impressed him. He actually said, "Damn, James," when I told him about the organized folders with 7 years of financial records. This is going to be very straightforward, he said. You have clear documentation of all assets and their sources. You have evidence of loans to her family that were never repaid. You kept your business finances separate. You own the house outright in your name. There are no children involved. Washington is a no-fault divorce state with community property rules. But wait, I interrupted. Community property. Generally speaking, assets acquired during a marriage are considered community property and split 50-50 in a divorce. But there are exceptions, particularly when one spouse brought significantly more assets to the marriage and maintained them separately, and when there's clear evidence that the other spouse that made no financial contribution. So she could get half the house? She could try. But you bought it with your money, it's titled in your name only, and you have documentation showing the source of funds was your premarital business. Plus, you have evidence she contributed nothing financially to the marriage. A judge would likely rule that the house is your separate property, same with your business, your retirement accounts, your savings. Relief flooded through me. What about the loans to her family? Those are technically debts they owe you. You could pursue repayment through small claims court or civil court, depending on the amounts. And the question is whether you want to. I thought about it. I want them to know I could. I want it documented as part of the divorce proceedings. But I'm not sure I want to actually spend the time and energy chasing them for money. That's fair. We can include it in the divorce petition, a full accounting of marital finances showing your contributions and her family's debts to you. It'll be part of the official record, even if you don't pursue collection. And the credit cards, the phone lines, the car lease, all that, all appropriate to cancel or remove her from, since they're in your name and you're solely financially responsible. She's going to be angry, but you haven't done anything illegal or even ethically questionable. You've just stopped paying for her lifestyle. We talked through logistics. I'd need to file a petition for dissolution of marriage. There would be a 90-day waiting period in Washington state, mandatory cooling off period. David would handle all the paperwork. We'd start the process first thing Monday morning. One more thing, David said. The text from her mother last night. The one about severing contact, save that. Screenshot it, back it up. That's going to be very useful if they try to paint you as the bad guy who abandoned the family. They're already doing that, I said, thinking of the group chat. Save all of it, he said. Every text, every voicemail, every email. Everything. This is going to get uglier before it gets better. He was right. Monday morning, my phone started ringing at 6 a.m. Sarah, then Patricia, then Marcus, then Emma, then Sarah again, then Patricia, then Marcus, then Emma, then Sarah again, in a rotating pattern that suggested they'd coordinated their approach. I didn't answer any of them. At 9 a.m., David filed the petition for dissolution of marriage at the county courthouse. The petition included a full accounting of all marital assets and debts, including the documented loans to Sarah's family members totaling $63,000. At 10 a.m., I called the Lexus dealership and explained that I needed to terminate the lease early. The penalties were steep, $4,000, but it was worth it to be free of that monthly obligation. The dealership sent a tow truck to pick up the vehicle at my house that afternoon. I also called the insurance company and removed Sarah from my auto insurance policy. At 11 a.m., Sarah apparently discovered that her car was being repossessed. The voicemails that followed were educational. James, what the fuck? They're taking my car. You can't do this. This is my car. Except it wasn't. It was a leased vehicle in my name that I'd been paying for. But she'd apparently convinced herself it was hers. More calls, more voicemails, getting increasingly frantic. James, I need my car for work. What work? James, you're being completely unreasonable. I was being unreasonable. James, my mother said you're being emotionally abusive by cutting off my transportation. The irony was apparently lost on her. At 1 p.m., a process server delivered the divorce petition to Sarah at the house. At 1:47 p.m., according to the timestamp, I received a text that simply said, "You're really doing this." Not a question, a statement. Like she'd finally realized this was real. I didn't respond. At 3 p.m., Jenny came home from work to find me sitting on her couch, staring at my phone with an expression she later described as shell-shocked. "What happened?" she asked immediately. I showed her the latest voicemail. Patricia, her voice shaking with what might have been anger or might have been genuine emotion. It was hard to tell with her. James, I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing, but this has gone far enough. My daughter is distraught. You've humiliated this family. The way you walked out on your own birthday party, the way you're treating Sarah now, it's cruel and it's beneath you. I raised her to choose a good man, and I thought you were that man, but clearly I was wrong. You need to stop this nonsense, apologize to everyone, and come home. We can all move past this like adults. Call me back. Jenny listened to the whole thing, her expression getting progressively more incredulous. Did she seriously? Jenny started, then stopped and started again. Did she seriously just frame your response to abuse as the actual abuse? I think she did. That's textbook Darvo, Jenny said. Deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. They're going to try to flip the narrative, so you're the villain. You need to prepare for that. She was right, but I was exhausted. I'd barely slept in 2 days. My entire life had detonated in the space of 48 hours, and I was running on adrenaline and spite. I need to go see the house, I said suddenly. I need to get more of my stuff before this gets worse. I'll come with you, Jenny said immediately. You don't have to. I'm coming with you. You're not going there alone. We drove to the house at 5 p.m., hoping Sarah would be out. No such luck. Her friend's car was in the driveway, which meant she'd gotten a ride home after her car had been picked up. Jenny parked on the street. You want me to come in? No, wait here. If I'm not out in 20 minutes, call me. If I don't answer, come in. You sound like you're planning a heist. I feel like I am. The front door was locked. She'd changed the locks already, which was both illegal since my name was on the deed, and also completely expected. But I had a key to the back door that I'd hidden in the garden shed months ago, back when I'd locked myself out once and had to wait 3 hours for Sarah to come home and let me in. I let myself in through the back. The house was quiet. I could hear voices upstairs, Sarah and someone else, probably her friend Michelle, who'd always encouraged Sarah's worst impulses. I moved quickly and quietly, gathering things I'd need, my desktop computer from the office, more clothes, my grandmother's watch that I kept in my nightstand, photo albums from before I met Sarah, a few books that mattered to me. I was heading back downstairs with my second load when Sarah appeared at the top of the stairs. What are you doing? Getting my things, I said calmly. You can't just break into our house. It's my house, Sarah. My name is on the deed. You changed the locks illegally. You abandoned me. I left. That's different. She came down the stairs, and I could see she'd been crying. Her eyes were red and swollen, her face blotchy. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for her. That part was smaller than it used to be. James, please, she said, her voice breaking. Please, can we just talk about this? What's there to talk about? Everything. The cake. I know that was wrong. I was just trying to be funny, and it came out wrong, and I'm so sorry. And the thing with my mom, she was upset because you left the party. She didn't mean it. And I shouldn't have liked that text. I was hurt that you walked away. I stood there with my arms full of belongings, looking at my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, and felt nothing but tired. Sarah, you threw my birthday cake on the floor and told me to eat it off the ground. In front of both our families. Your family laughed. You laughed. That wasn't a joke that came out wrong. That was deliberate cruelty. I didn't mean it like, yes, you did. You absolutely meant it exactly like that. And your mother's text wasn't just about me leaving the party. She said they were cutting off all contact with me permanently. And you liked it. You endorsed them cutting me out of the family while I was upstairs alone. I was angry. You embarrassed us. I embarrassed you. I couldn't help the bitter laugh. I embarrassed you by quietly removing myself from a situation where I was being humiliated. That's what you're going with? James, did you know, I said, suddenly curious, that over the course of our marriage, I've loaned your family $63,000 that was never paid back? Did you know that I pay for literally everything in your life? The house, the car, the credit cards, the utilities, the food, the vacations, everything. Did you know that you've contributed exactly $0 to our household in 7 years? She stared at me. That's not, you make more money. I was building my business. What business, Sarah? The blog that got 3 posts before you gave up? The Etsy store that made $200? The interior design consultation service that never got a single client? You've been building your business for 7 years while I've been paying for your entire existence. That's so fucking cold, she said. And now she was crying again. That's so cruel. I'm your wife. We're supposed to support each other. Support goes both ways. You've never supported me. Not emotionally, not financially, not in any way that actually matters. You've used me. You and your entire family have used me like an ATM machine that occasionally needed to be humiliated to keep it in line. That's not true. Your mother told me to stay away forever, and you liked the message. What part of that suggests you value me as a person? She didn't have an answer for that. I walked past her to the door where Jenny was now standing, looking ready to physically intervene if necessary. The divorce papers were filed today, I said. My attorney will be in touch with yours. If you don't have one, you should get one. The house is mine. I'll be back for more of my stuff later. I suggest you start looking for somewhere else to live, because I'll be asking you to vacate once the divorce is final. You can't kick me out. This is my home. It's my house. You'll have 90 days minimum because of the waiting period. But yes, eventually, you'll need to find your own place. One that you pay for yourself. I left her standing there, crying, calling my name. I felt bad about it for approximately 10 minutes. Then I remembered the cake on the floor and her laughing face, and I didn't feel bad anymore. The next 2 weeks were a blur of legal paperwork and logistics. Sarah hired an attorney, Patricia paid for it, of course, and immediately filed a motion asking for temporary spousal support and exclusive use of the marital home. David filed a counter motion with our complete financial documentation showing that Sarah had no basis for spousal support claims given that she'd contributed nothing to the marriage financially and had demonstrated no effort to become self-supporting. The family group chat had gone quiet after I'd muted it, but individual messages continued. Marcus sent me long texts about how I was ruining his life by suddenly demanding repayment of the loan I'd given him 6 years ago. Emma sent me crying voice messages about how I was tearing the family apart. Patricia sent formal, cold texts about my obligations and my character deficiencies. Sarah's messages cycled between apologetic, angry, and desperate. I'm sorry. I love you. Please, can we fix this? You're being incredibly cruel, and everyone sees it. I don't know how to pay for anything. You've left me with nothing. My attorney says you're required to maintain the status quo. You can't just cut me off financially. That last one was partially true. There were rules about maintaining status quo during divorce proceeding. But status quo meant I had to keep paying the mortgage on the house and keep the utilities on. It didn't mean I had to keep paying for her discretionary spending, her car, her phone, or her credit cards. David filed a detailed financial declaration showing exactly what I was maintaining: the house, the utilities, the property insurance, and what I'd legitimately terminated: her personal credit cards, her car lease, her phone line. The judge reviewing the temporary orders agreed with our position. Sarah would have to get a job. The concept seemed to genuinely shock her. "What am I supposed to do?" she asked in one voice message, her voice high and strained. "I don't have any recent work experience. You've made it impossible for me to build a career." I'd made it impossible by paying for everything so she could pursue her various business ventures that never materialized into actual businesses. I'd made it impossible by never once discouraging her from working or asking her to stay home. I'd made it impossible by being a financial safety net that enabled her to treat employment as optional. The logic was fascinating in its complete inversion of reality. 3 weeks after I left, I went back to the house one final time to get the last of my belongings. Sarah had finally moved out. She was staying with Patricia, which seemed fitting. The house was in disarray. She'd apparently gone through in a rage and taken or damaged anything she thought of as hers, which included some things that were objectively mine. She'd taken my grandmother's quilt from the guest bedroom, my record player, several books that had been gifts from my parents, and left damage in her wake: holes punched in walls, a broken window, the hardwood floor in the living room, the floor I'd refinished myself, deliberately gouged with what looked like keys. I took photos of everything and sent them to David. "She's not helping herself," he said when he called me back. "This is going to look very bad in front of a judge. Destruction of property, theft of your personal items. We can use this." "I don't want to destroy her," I said. "I just want to be done." "I know, but she's making choices here that have consequences. Document everything and let me worry about strategy." I packed up the last of my things: my books, my clothes, some kitchen items I'd brought into the marriage, the few pieces of furniture that were meaningful to me. Jenny helped me load everything into a U-Haul, and I took one last look at the house I'd worked so hard to buy and maintain. It was supposed to be our home, our future, the place where we'd build a life together. Instead, it was just a house, a nice house, objectively speaking. Good bones, great location, beautiful original details that I'd lovingly restored. But it had never been a home. Not really, because a home needs more than good bones and nice finishes. It needs respect and kindness and mutual support, and we'd never had any of those things. I locked the door and dropped the keys into a mailer for David to hold in trust until the divorce was final. Then I drove away and didn't look back. The divorce took 6 months total. Sarah's attorney tried various tactics, claiming she deserved half the house, half my business, half my retirement accounts, ongoing spousal support, compensation for her lost career opportunities, even a portion of my future earnings. David countered every claim with documentation. My meticulous record keeping became the foundation of our case. The judge was not sympathetic to Sarah's arguments. In the final hearing, her attorney tried to paint me as financially controlling and manipulative. They brought up the fact that I'd canceled her credit cards and her phone line and terminated her car lease. "Your Honor," David responded, "Mr. Peterson maintained the marital home and all associated expenses as required. The items opposing counsel mentions, credit cards, phone service, and a vehicle lease, were all in Mr. Peterson's name alone, accounts for which he was solely legally responsible. Ms. Peterson is a capable adult with no disabilities, preventing her from employment or from establishing her own credit and phone service. Mr. Peterson was under no legal obligation to continue providing these services for someone who had, according to her own mother's text message, submitted as Exhibit 17, been cut off from all family contact. He certainly wasn't obligated to continue this support after being served with divorce papers." The judge reviewed the financial records, the documentation of loans to Sarah's family, the evidence of Sarah's complete lack of financial contribution to the marriage, and the text messages from that night, including Patricia's message about severing contact, which Sarah had liked. His ruling was delivered in dry legal language, but the substance was clear. Sarah would receive nothing except her personal belongings. The house was my separate property. My business was my separate property. My retirement accounts were my separate property. There would be no spousal support. Sarah was young, healthy, educated, and capable of supporting herself. The judge also noted, almost as an aside, that the documented loans to Sarah's family members remained valid debts that I could pursue if I chose to, though they were not part of the marital dissolution itself. Sarah's attorney tried to object, but the judge was done. "Miss Peterson," he said, looking directly at Sarah, "you made choices throughout this marriage. You chose not to pursue employment. You chose not to contribute financially. You chose to depend entirely on your spouse's income, while simultaneously, according to the extensive evidence presented, showing him very little respect or appreciation. These were your choices, and choices have consequences. This court sees no basis for transferring Mr. Peterson's separate property to you simply because you married him. Dissolution granted." Sarah was crying. Patricia, who'd attended the hearing, looked like she'd been slapped. I felt empty, not triumphant, not vindicated, just tired and sad and ready for it to be over. That was 8 months ago. I'm writing this now from a different house, smaller than the old one, but mine in a way that place never was. I bought it for cash using money from selling the previous house. It's in a quiet neighborhood, with a yard where I'm slowly learning to garden. I have an office with a door that closes and walls I painted the exact shade of gray-blue I wanted. My business is thriving. Turns out, when you're not constantly stressed about your home life, you have more energy for work. I've landed 3 major contracts in the past 6 months and hired 2 junior developers to help with the workload. I've been to therapy, a lot of therapy. Dr. Martinez has helped me understand that what I experienced was indeed abuse, financial exploitation, emotional manipulation, systematic degradation. She's helped me recognize the patterns, understand why I accepted them for so long, and develop better boundaries for the future. I talk to my mother and Jenny regularly, and my father and I have started a tradition of monthly fishing trips where we mostly sit in comfortable silence and occasionally talk about things that matter. It's been good. I don't talk to Sarah. Our last communication was through attorneys when the house sale finalized, and I sent her a check for half the profit. Not because I was legally required to, I wasn't, but because I wanted to be able to look at myself in the mirror. She'd lived there too, even if she hadn't paid for it. The check was for $43,000. She cashed it without acknowledgement. I did eventually pursue the loans, not out of spite, but because Dr. Martinez helped me understand that allowing people to exploit you without consequences just enables them to exploit others. I filed claims in civil court for the documented loans to Marcus, Emma, and Patricia. Marcus settled immediately, agreeing to a payment plan of $200 a month. He'll be paying me back for approximately 20 months more, and he's been consistent with payments, probably because his attorney explained what would happen if he defaulted. Emma ignored the lawsuit until her wages were garnished. She was furious, sent me a long, rambling email about how I was destroying her life over money that meant nothing to me but everything to her. I didn't respond. Her payments are automatic now, deducted from her paycheck before she ever sees the money. Patricia fought it. She hired an expensive attorney and tried to argue that the loan had been a gift, that the promissory note she'd signed was signed under duress, that I'd misrepresented the terms. Basically, every defense her attorney could think of. It took 9 months and cost me about $7,000 in legal fees, but I won. The judge ruled that the promissory note was valid and enforceable, and Patricia was ordered to pay the full amount plus interest and my legal fees. She's appealing, of course. I don't expect to see the money anytime soon, if ever, but it's on her credit report now, this judgment against her. And that feels like enough. I've been on a few dates, nothing serious yet, but I'm learning how to recognize red flags I would have ignored before. I'm learning what healthy relationships look like, the mutual respect, the genuine interest in each other's well-being, the balance of give and take. I'm learning that I deserve those things. Last month, I ran into Sarah at a coffee shop. She was with someone, a man in an expensive suit, older than her, the kind of man who carries himself like he's used to being the most important person in any room. They didn't see me and I left before they could. But I heard her laugh. That bright, performative laugh she used to use at Sunday dinners when she wanted to impress her mother. She was playing a role, the way she'd always played a role. I wondered if the man with her knew that yet. I wondered if he'd figure it out before he got hurt, or if he was the kind of man who wouldn't get hurt. Maybe he was just like her, and they'd be perfect together in their mutual superficiality. Then I realized I didn't actually care, and that realization was liberating. I keep thinking about that night, my 34th birthday, the cake on the floor, Sarah's face when she told me to eat it off the ground, the laughter from her family, that feeling of crystalline clarity when I understood fully and completely that I needed to leave. If you'd asked me a year ago if I thought my marriage would end because of a thrown cake, I would have laughed. It seems so small, so silly. A cake, a stupid birthday cake. But it wasn't really about the cake, was it? It was about 7 years of small cruelties that I'd absorbed and excused and explained away. It was about being treated as less than human by people who were supposed to love me. It was about realizing that I'd spent so long trying to be good enough for Sarah and her family that I'd forgotten to ask whether they were good enough for me. They weren't. And once I saw that clearly, once I stopped making excuses and stopped accepting the unacceptable, the path forward became obvious. Leave, document, protect yourself. Don't engage with manipulation. Don't allow yourself to be guilted into accepting mistreatment. Stand firm. It wasn't easy. There were moments when I doubted myself, when I wondered if I was being too harsh, too unforgiving, too cold. There were nights when I lay awake wondering if I should have tried harder, should have gone to marriage counseling, should have given her another chance. But then I'd remember the cake on the floor. I'd remember her laughing. I'd remember Patricia's text about severing contact and Sarah liking it. I'd remember 7 years of being treated like a wallet with legs, like an ATM with a pulse, like a servant who occasionally needed to be reminded of his place. And I'd know I'd made the right choice. Someone asked me recently, a friend of Mike's who'd heard about the divorce, if I regretted the marriage, if I felt like I'd wasted 7 years of my life. I thought about it for a long time before answering. No, I said finally, I don't regret it, and it wasn't wasted. I learned a lot about what I want in a partner, about what I won't tolerate, about my own capacity to endure and adapt, and eventually to stand up for myself. Those are valuable lessons. That's a very mature perspective, she said. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I'm just trying to find meaning in something that hurt like hell. Both things can be true. I'm 35 now, a year older than I was that night, a year wiser, I hope. I have a good life, a peaceful life, a life where I'm not constantly walking on eggshells, not constantly calculating whether my words will be used against me later, not constantly trying to make myself smaller to fit into someone else's narrow vision of who I should be. I have a house I love, a business that's growing, a family that actually loves and respects me, friends who value me, a therapist who's helping me build a healthier future, and increasingly I have a sense of self-worth that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval. The missing calls, those 100 missed calls that first night, that number that seemed so absurd I laughed, they stopped eventually. They took weeks to taper off, but they did stop. Sarah stopped calling, Marcus stopped calling, Emma stopped calling. Eventually, even Patricia stopped calling. They moved on to other sources, I suppose, other people to use. Or maybe, and I hope this is true, though I'm not optimistic, maybe they learned something from this. Maybe Sarah got a job and discovered she was capable of supporting herself. Maybe Marcus learned to live within his means. Maybe Emma learned that actions have consequences. Maybe Patricia learned that you can't treat people like disposable commodities. Probably not, but maybe. If you're reading this and seeing yourself in my story, if you're the person absorbing small cruelties, making excuses, trying harder to be good enough for someone who will never think you're good enough, I want you to know something. You deserve better. Not someday. Not after you change or improve or finally crack the code of how to make them happy. Right now, exactly as you are. You deserve respect and kindness and partnership and love that builds you up instead of tearing you down. And if you're not getting those things, you can leave. It might be hard. It might be scary. It might cost you money and time and temporary stability. But you can leave. I did. You can too. That night, standing in my living room with cake on the floor and laughter in the air, I could have stayed. I could have swallowed my pride one more time. I could have apologized for whatever I was supposed to have done wrong. I could have cleaned up the cake and pretended everything was fine and gone back to being the person they expected me to be. I could have stayed, but I would have been dying by inches, slowly losing myself piece by piece until there was nothing left but a hollow shell shaped like a husband performing a role in someone else's play. Instead, I chose myself. I chose my dignity. I chose a future where I wasn't someone's punchline or someone's ATM or someone's emotional dumping ground. And I chose to be alone rather than lonely in a marriage. And it was the best decision I ever made. Last week, I went to a party, a real party, not a performance. My coworker's birthday, casual and relaxed, people I actually like spending time with. Someone brought a cake, chocolate coincidentally, though not as elaborate as the one Sarah had thrown. When it was time to serve it, my coworker's girlfriend picked it up to carry it to the kitchen for cutting. She tripped. The cake didn't fall, she caught herself. But for a split second, I saw it tilting, saw the trajectory it would have taken, and I felt my heart rate spike. Then she steadied herself, laughed, said, "That was close," and carried the cake safely to the kitchen. And I realized I was shaking. I excused myself and went outside for some air. Mike followed me out a few minutes later. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Just weird flashback moment." He nodded. He'd been there that night. He'd seen the whole thing. "You know it's different now, right? You're with different people, people who actually give a shit about you." "I know. Do you?" He looked at me seriously. "Because from where I'm standing, you're still waiting for the other shoe to drop. You're still braced for the cruelty. And I get it. That's what trauma does. But you need to let yourself believe that this is real, that there are people who will treat you with basic decency without you having to earn it or brace for them to take it away." He was right. Dr. Martinez had said similar things. It's one thing to intellectually understand that you deserve better. It's another thing to emotionally believe it. To let yourself relax into trust and connection without constantly waiting for the betrayal. I'm working on it. Sometimes I wonder what Sarah tells people about our divorce. I wonder if she's learned anything or if she's spun it into a story where she's the victim and I'm the villain who cruelly abandoned her. I imagine her at brunch with friends, dabbing her eyes delicately with a napkin, explaining how her husband just snapped one day for no reason and left her with nothing. How he was always so cold and calculating with money, how she tried so hard to make him happy, but nothing was ever good enough. How his family turned him against her. How she's had to rebuild her entire life from scratch because of his cruelty. Maybe that's what she believes. Memory is funny that way. We tend to remember ourselves as the heroes of our own stories, even when we're not. Or maybe she knows. Maybe late at night, alone with her thoughts, she remembers the cake on the floor and her mother's text and the pattern of small cruelties that led to that moment. Maybe she has moments of clarity where she sees what she did, what she was, what she cost herself. I don't know. I'll never know. And increasingly, I'm okay with that. Her interior life isn't my responsibility anymore. Her growth or lack of growth isn't my concern. She's not my problem to solve or my person to fix or my burden to carry. She's just someone I used to know. Last month, I celebrated my 35th birthday. Jenny threw me a small party, just family and close friends, people who actually care about me. My parents came, Mike was there, and a few of my new friends from work. We grilled burgers in my backyard, played stupid yard games, sat around talking and laughing as the sun went down. Someone brought a cake, chocolate, with simple buttercream frosting and "Happy Birthday, James" written across the top in blue icing. When it was time to sing, everyone gathered around, and I felt a wave of emotion that caught me completely off guard. These people were here because they wanted to be, because they liked me, not because they had to be, not because there was something they wanted from me, not because it would look bad if they didn't show up, just because they liked me. We sang "Happy Birthday," off-key and cheerful, and I blew out the candles and made a wish. I wished for continued healing, for growth, for the courage to keep opening myself up to connection even when it's scary, for the wisdom to recognize red flags early on, for the strength to maintain boundaries, for a future where I'm not defined by what I survived, but by what I built afterward. Then we cut the cake and ate it like civilized humans, using plates and forks, sitting in chairs or on the grass, talking and laughing and being present with each other. No one threw it on the floor. No one laughed at me. No one made me feel small. It was perfect. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if I'll ever remarry, or if I'll have kids, or what my life will look like in 5 or 10 or 20 years. But I know this. I'll never again tolerate being treated the way Sarah and her family treated me. I'll never again make myself small to fit into someone else's narrow expectations. And I'll never again accept cruelty disguised as humor, or exploitation disguised as family obligation, or abuse disguised as love. I know my worth now. Not arrogantly, not defensively, but quietly and certainly. I know what I bring to relationships: loyalty and stability and genuine care and the willingness to show up and do the work. And I know that those things are valuable, that they deserve to be reciprocated, and that if they're not, I can and will walk away. That night, May 14th, 2024, changed everything. It was the night I stopped accepting the unacceptable. The night I chose myself. The night I realized that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is leave. The cake hit the floor, and I walked away, and my life began. It's been 18 months since that night now. I'm sitting in my home office, my actual office, with my door and my walls and my chosen shade of gray-blue, writing this all down. Why? Partly for myself. Dr. Martinez suggested it as a way to process everything, to see how far I've come, to acknowledge the journey, but partly for anyone else who might need to hear it. Anyone standing in their own living room, metaphorical cake on the floor, wondering if they're crazy for feeling hurt, wondering if they're being too sensitive, wondering if it's really that bad. It is that bad. You're not crazy, you're not too sensitive, and you deserve better. I received a text last week from a number I didn't recognize. It took me a moment to realize it was Sarah. She'd changed her number at some point. The text said, "I've been in therapy. I'm starting to understand things I didn't understand before. I'm sorry for how I treated you. You deserved better. I hope you're happy." I stared at that message for a long time. Part of me wanted to respond, to say something gracious and forgiving, to acknowledge her growth, to wish her well in return, but mostly I just felt tired. Whether Sarah's apology was genuine growth or just another manipulation didn't really matter anymore. That chapter of my life was closed. She wasn't my responsibility. Her healing journey wasn't something I needed to participate in or validate or even acknowledge. I deleted the message without responding. And then I went back to living my life, my good, peaceful, drama-free life, and I didn't think about it again for the rest of the day. That felt like progress. If there's a lesson in all of this, I think it's this. You teach people how to treat you. And for 7 years, I taught Sarah and her family that they could treat me terribly and I would absorb it. I would make excuses for it. I would come back for more. The teaching stopped that night when I walked up the stairs and didn't come back down. Sometimes people ask me if I miss being married, if I miss having a partner, if I get lonely in my small house with my quiet life. Sometimes, sure. Loneliness is real, and there are moments when I wish I had someone to share things with. The small victories at work, the funny thing I saw on a walk, the peaceful silence of a Sunday morning. But there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. I was lonelier in my marriage, surrounded by people who should have loved me but didn't, than I am now in my solitude. Now I have space to think and grow and breathe and figure out who I am when I'm not constantly bracing for the next criticism or the next impossible standard or the next casual cruelty. It's good space, healing space, space I needed. And when I'm ready, when I've done enough work on myself, when I've built enough confidence in my own judgment, when I trust myself to recognize and maintain healthy boundaries, I'll share that space with someone who deserves to be in it. Someone who sees me as a whole person, not a wallet. Someone who treats me with respect, not contempt disguised as jokes. Someone who contributes to my life instead of just extracting from it. Someone who, when I have a birthday, celebrates it with me, instead of turning it into a performance of my degradation. That person is out there somewhere, or maybe they're not. Maybe I'll be contentedly single for the rest of my life. Either way is okay, because I'm okay. Finally, fully, genuinely okay. The last thing I want to say is about forgiveness. People have asked me if I've forgiven Sarah. If I've forgiven her family, they say it like forgiveness is something I owe them, like my healing is incomplete without it. I think that's bullshit. Forgiveness is complex. It's not a switch you flip or a finish line you cross. It's not something you do for the person who hurt you. It's something you do for yourself, if and when it serves you. Have I forgiven Sarah? I don't know. I don't wake up angry at her anymore. I don't fantasize about revenge or spend my energy wishing bad things for her. When I think about her, which is rare, I feel mostly nothing, a distant sort of sadness that things turned out the way they did, but no active bitterness. Is that forgiveness? Maybe, or maybe it's just indifference, which might be better than forgiveness. Because forgiveness implies a relationship, and we don't have one. We won't ever have one. She's not my wife, she's not my friend. She's not my responsibility. She's just someone who taught me a valuable lesson about what I won't tolerate. And for that, paradoxically, I suppose I should be grateful. But gratitude and forgiveness are different things too. Mostly, I just hope she becomes a better person. Not for me, I don't need anything from her, but for herself and for whoever comes after me in her life. I hope she learns something. I hope she grows. But whether she does or doesn't, that's not my story anymore. And this is my story. I survived. I left. I rebuilt. I'm thriving. The cake is long gone, swept up and discarded. The stains scrubbed from the floor I no longer own. But the clarity that came from watching it hit that floor. That's permanent. That's mine to keep. And it's more valuable than any birthday cake could ever be.